At the end of 1934, FDR stepped back and assessed the first New Deal and all that had been accomplished. Up to that point, what had been done was, for the United States, revolutionary. Regulation of the banking and financial industries, creation of the relief system to help the unemployed, the AAA, the TVA. It was, again, for the United States, revolutionary. It wasn't revolutionary like communism or socialism or fascism, but it had been an enormous amount of change. And he had to assess which way to go, whether he wanted to move the country in the direction of doing more or doing less. And there will be two major factors that will lead him in the direction of doing more. First was the opposition. By 1934, in 1933, most Americans were in support of doing anything because of how bad the situation was. But he had started getting some important opposition by 1934 from all sides. Of course, there was opposition from the political right, and people that said that the New Deal had gone too far, was doing too much, and it needed to be scaled back. And the most important group that argued the New Deal was doing too much was the American Liberty League. The American Liberty League was a group of individuals, especially business and political leaders, that said the New Deal was destroying American liberty and American freedom and destroying the Constitution. And they called for undoing all of it. They wanted to get rid of the AAA. They wanted to undo all of the relief measures, undo the regulations. And this was a bipartisan group, too. There were a lot of prominent Republicans, but there were also a lot of prominent Democrats, like Al Smith, the Democratic candidate in 1928. It also included the heads of Montgomery Ward and Sears, the DuPont family. In general, what united all the people of the American Liberty League was they were wealthy. They were very rich. They're the economic elite. So, of course, that means it was a fairly small group. At its max, at its absolute height in 1936, it had 125,000 members. So that is the biggest opposition he had from the political right. His bigger opposition was from the political left, or people that said the New Deal had not gone far enough and was not doing enough. And there were several people on this side, but a couple of the more important ones. One was a guy named Dr. Francis Townsend. Townsend was a doctor in California, and when he saw a bunch of 65-year-old women, 65-year-old women going through the trash trying to find food, he was so horrified, he came up with what he called the Townsend Plan. His idea, his Townsend Plan, called for giving every retired senior over the age of 60 $200 government pension every month, on the stipulation that they didn't work and they were retired, and they had to spend that money by the end of the month. Just so you know, $200 then today would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,800. So we're talking about almost $5,000 a month. The idea behind the Townsend Plan was, for one, seniors would be retiring, so they would be leaving jobs, which would open up jobs for younger people. Also, because they had to spend the money by the end of the month, it would increase consumption in the United States and it would create jobs. They would go to stores, they would everything they purchase would mean an increase in consumer spending, which again is 70% of the US economy. Now, this plan was really popular with a lot of people. At its height, there were 5,000 Townsend clubs throughout the United States promoting this, and he had 2 million active supporters in those Townsend clubs. Proposals or support for the Townsend Club, though, petitions that were signed all through the country had about 25 million signatures. So 25 million Americans signed a petition supporting this. That is obviously massive. But that wasn't nearly as big as FDR's most important critic on the political left, a guy named Huey Long. Huey Long will be the biggest challenger to FDR, and he is an example of how bad things were and how desperate Americans were, and also of American demagogue, or someone that was trying to make themselves into a dictator. He was governor of Louisiana, and as governor of Louisiana, he did some very genuinely good things. He improved all the roads. He provided free textbooks to school students, built up schools. He's the reason LSU is such a good college. To this day, if you go to Louisiana and you mention the Kingfish, you will get either people that absolutely hate him, but there are still people to this day that just absolutely love him. Now, he did a lot of very good things, but he did it in a very corrupt way. He made himself a virtual dictator of Louisiana. He had people he brought around him that all he cared about was that they were loyal to him. And he used ruthless tactics against the people that were opposed to him. And when I say ruthless, I mean bribery, blackmail, and blatant physical intimidation. He would hire people to go like rough up his enemies. So he basically became a dictator in Louisiana. He also he was a senator, and he'll be a governor and senator at the same time for a little while, which was not even allowed, but he will completely control the state. At first, he was a huge proponent of FDR and the New Deal, but by 1934, he became a big critic because he wanted to be president himself. So he will come up with what he called the Share Our Wealth Society. And the idea behind the Share Our Wealth Society is, he said, every man a king. And according to his Share Our Wealth Society, he said every American will be guaranteed a home, $5,000 annually, and a pension for seniors. So every American, you have the pension for seniors, but more importantly, every American is guaranteed a home and $5,000. Just in case you're wondering, $5,000 adjusted for inflation is about $120,000 today, a little bit less. Think about that. Every American is guaranteed a home and $120,000 a year. How was he going to pay for that? He said he would confiscate the wealth of the rich. So he is calling for something very radical. This is what communism looks like. Communism, redistribution of the wealth. So he is calling for genuine communism. This is scary, especially because he had somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 million Americans that supported his Share Our Wealth program. He was incredibly dangerous, and obviously his plan is absolutely nuts. Economists even put the numbers down. There was not enough money among the wealthy to even fund this idea. So it is economically unfeasible idea in the first place. And at one point, he even addressed that. He was speaking to a bunch of farmers in Iowa, and he said, maybe somebody says I don't understand it. Well, you don't have to. Just shut your damn eyes and believe it. That's all. He presented himself as a country bumpkin. He presented himself as very folksy, but dressed very flamboyantly. He was dangerous. He was really dangerous. FDR will call him one of the two most dangerous people in the country. I'll tell you the second person he called the most dangerous person in a future lecture, but this is really dangerous. This is the type of person that was getting a lot of support in other parts of the world. This is what you get when you have an economic collapse. So you're FDR. You have the American Liberty League on one side. It has at the most 125,000 members. And then you have on the other side, political right was the American Liberty League. Political left, between Huey Long and Townsend, you had almost 10 million people supporting them and what they were calling for. So the numbers were overwhelming. The political left is what FDR has to worry about. I don't mean to be crass, but fortunately for the United States, he was assassinated while he was back in Louisiana, but he was a genuinely dangerous person. So, partly because of the political opposition he was receiving from the political left. That's the first reason he'll decide to do more. And the second reason is the American public made it very, very clear they supported the New Deal. They supported everything FDR had been doing up to that point. Every 2 years between presidential elections, we have the congressional midterm elections. And 1934 congressional midterm elections, just so you know, the party in power almost always loses support. And that is overwhelmingly true throughout U.S. history. 1934 elections, the Democrats actually gained seats in both houses of Congress, and they gained every governorship in the United States except 7. So this is what you call a mandate. The American public wanted and demanded FDR go in the right direction of doing more. The vast majority of the U.S. population made it very clear they supported the New Deal, they liked the New Deal, and they wanted him to go farther. So, in order to undermine the political left, FDR will launch in 1935 what is always called the Second New Deal. And he made it very clear why. I'm fighting communism, Huey Longism, Coughlinism, and Townsendism. We need to save our system, the capitalist system, from such crackpot ideas. He did not like radicalism, and so to undermine radicalism, he will go in the direction of doing more.